Okay, today we're going to talk more about arrays, how to manipulate arrays and play with them a little bit. So I have a file on the P drive that you have access to called states.txt, and I want you to get that, and we're going to play with this. So this is just a file that has quoted names of all the states in the United States. Okay, and contrary to popular belief, there are only 50 states in the United States. There are territories and everything else, but there are actually only 50. So I have them separated by commas for you because I want to turn this text file into an array of states. And remember, an array is just a bunch of things all packed into one variable name. So I'm going to copy this and put it into my code. And we'll take this data here, and I want to move it into an array. So how would I assign this list of text into an array? Okay, so I'm going to call it maybe states, might be a good array name. And open square bracket. And then at the very end, I'm going to put a closing square bracket. All right, pretty simple. Now my states is what type of variable? An array of strings. Happens to be strings. It doesn't, but Ruby again doesn't care. But these are all strings, so every state in here is a string. So if I wanted to pull out state number 4, how would I do that? Okay, so there we get into this question. If I want to say put states sub 3, what is that going to print? Let me go to the top here again. Which state is going to be printed out? Arkansas. Who says Arkansas? Who doesn't say Arkansas? Okay, the Arkansas have it. Because we start from what index on arrays? 0. So this is state sub 0, state sub 1, sub 2, sub 3.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
Donuts.
Nice. We have donuts coming. I love donuts. Make sure we have a maple bacon bar in there. All right, so here we go. We have Arkansas, so that printed out correctly. Isn't that nice? So how about if I print out states sub 50? What is it going to print out? Nothing? Who say nothing? How about, who says what else? Wisconsin? Somebody said? How about Wyoming? Pennsylvania, probably not. Probably, it's not a state. It's not a state. It's a district. All right, so what is it going to print? Nothing, okay? I think the nothings have it. Because 50 is outside the range of the data that's been declared here. So this is, since there are 50 states, and we can look at that in my original text file, this is line 1 all the way up through 50, so I do have 50 states here. So Wyoming is actually going to be what? State sub 49, all right? So let's print that. So very good. So 50 gives me nothing. Wyoming gives me, 49 gives me Wyoming. All right. Any questions on that so far? Yeah.
Is it considered bad programming technique to add a nil at the very beginning to bring it up from 1 to 50?
Depends on who you talk to. In the old days, that was very bad programming. Because we were limited on the RAM that we had. So RAM was all important. Every byte that we wasted counted. If you look in the Apple II days, we had 64K of RAM to write all these little games and stuff. There was every byte counted, and they fit every kind of variable you could think of into 8 bits even. We had flags that we would shift these bits around just so we could store stuff in the smallest byte. So the old-time programmers are going to say, yes, that's a bad thing. The new-time one, typically they don't care. I mean, look at Microsoft Word, how bloated it is. It's huge. It's gigabytes to install. It takes, a gigabyte of RAM at least to run properly. It's just crazy. So it's a semantic thing. I consider it bad programming because I'm old. But it does take away some of the issues of the errors that you have by being off by 1. The problem is most programs out there are written in the old style. And programmers are learning in the old style, so you're going to get to code that starts at 0 and you won't know what to do with it. So I don't have a firm answer for you, I think. Is that vague enough? I think it's better to stick with 0. People know that. People know it starts with 0. You can use a nil if you want. I won't grade you wrong on it. So, all right. So how about if I wanted to print how many items there are in my array? All right, dot length. So did they cover that in the Code Academy? Not yet, and you're on hashes and you didn't discover that? Okay. All right, good. So here's the documentation, the ruby-doc.org. And this is the documentation for the array class. So my states comes from the array class, and that'll become more important next quarter as we deal with classes. But so I have a bunch of methods, a bunch of array type stuff that I can do with my array object. And one of them is this count. Count tells me how many elements or cells I have in my array. Count is the same as, and they've aliased this, meaning that there's different names for this. There's a count, there's a size, which is the same, see alias for length, and length. So 3 different ways I can get how many elements are in an array. So in my program, I can just say puts states, and how would I call that method? So let's look at the documentation. Length returns the number of elements in self. So self means whatever is to the left of the method. So this is the object dot length, and we're calling a method on the object before it. So if the object before it is an array, and in this case it's a hard-coded array, it's going to return me an integer of 5. Okay, there are 5 elements in this array. All right, so count does the same thing. I think they had a little bit better. It's exactly the same. Returns the number of elements that are in the array itself. All right, so what was I saying? So how do I call that method called count? Dot count. Okay, so this is my object, my states here. I can call dot count on it, and that returns what type of variable? An integer. So my puts is going to convert that back to a string and print it out to the screen. And so I've got 50. So there are 50 elements in my array here. All right? So how would I go through my array without using any special methods yet? How would I go through my array with what you know now and print out every state on its own line? Puts states. All right, now, without this is not what I'm getting at, but I want to show you that this actually works because this is kind of a shortcut for printing out all the values in the array. But that's not what I want. I want to actually go through the array one at a time, printing the state out one line at a time. Pardon me? A for loop. Okay, we don't know for loops yet, but that is valid. What's another type of a loop structure we already know? We don't know that one yet. A loop. Okay, good. A while loop. So let's do a while loop. There is an each. We'll get to that one in a minute. So we have a while something and end, and then we need, so there's three pieces that I need for my while loop, right? What's the first thing? An initial condition, we'll call it a count. We're going to assign that to what do you think would be a nice value? 0, okay, because we're going to print state sub 0 at some point, all right? And then I need to increment my counter inside, so that's the second part. And then my Boolean expression, what is this going to be here? Okay, it's going to be based off my count. Very good. And what else? The length of the array. Very good. So I need to know something about my count and something about my length of the array. How would I construct my Boolean expression? All right, so let's do that. Less than or equal to, and let's see if that is going to work. Now, inside I want to print out the value that's stored in each cell in the states array. So how do I access each cell in my states array? Chirp, chirp, chirp. Count. All right, because count is going to increment every time through the loop. It's starting at 0. So state, the first time through the loop, count is going to be what? 0. So state sub 0 gives me what? Abalama. All right. And then we're going to increment our count, and that's going to go through. So I need to print this out. I'm going to say puts. Yep. That's what you were going to say. Okay. So that's how I get the value from the array, and then I increment. So this is a standard way of looping through an array, except there's a mistake here. So let's run it, and let's put something to show you what the error is. Okay. I'm going to put end, and we'll run it. And it printed all the way out. It started here, Alabama, shing, 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 all the way to the bottom. And it should have printed end right after Wyoming. So why do I have a blank line here? It tried to do it one more time. States.length is what number? We printed it out up here, 50. And I'm going from 0 to less than or equal to 50. So that's actually going to loop that 51 times. Does everybody see that? That's a really common programming error, going out of the bounds of the array that you have. In the old days, in the C days, this would actually crash your program. But it might not crash it right away. It might be several minutes later that this will crash, because you could overwrite memory that was part of another program. That's called a buffer length overflow. If anybody does any hacking, that's how they break into websites, is by putting code outside of the arrays that they're working on. They actually it's called a buffer overflow error. Anyway, outside the scope of the class. So we need to change this, and there's a couple ways I can change that. I need to go less than, one less than my states.length. So I could say -1. What's the other way I could do this? Just less than, right? I think that's cleaner. I don't have to do any math on it. So while count is less than states.length. So this is a standard way to loop through and access all the elements in an array. That's what that does, using a while loop that you understand now.
Did you need the count right there? So when I took the count off, put states, you did the same thing? You need that count right there?
Yes, because if you don't, what's going to happen? Let's do that. That's a good one. How many times am I printing out all of the states? 50 times I get 50 states. I've got 2,500 lines here. And it just went so fast you didn't see it. See that? See this? We went way down there. Look how many times I printed. All right? So, because up here, remember I said when I printed just states, that was a shortcut to print the entire array. If I want to look at a single element in the array, I have to use my count. Okay? Good question. Any other questions on this? This is so standard that you should be writing these in your sleep. Okay? And this works on almost any language that you're going to work in, like C#, Visual Basic, JavaScript, Java, Python, any language you can think of is going to have some type of a structure. The while loop is the basic way of getting through access to everything in a loop like this. So you should be able to think about those and write these in your sleep. Any questions on that? All right. How would I change this loop now to print them backwards without using any special array functions? Without using any special array functions. You may not use reverse. Okay, so we want to count backwards. So we want to start our count, our initial condition, at the top of the array. How do we know how many there are? Right. We don't want to ever type a number because later on I might change this array and add some more states. So we want to we want to use the values that are here, and hard coding numbers like I've done here is a bad programming concept. You don't ever really want to do that if at all possible. So my count I want to set to something. Count.length, all right, or states.length actually. All right, so my count is now going to be what number? No. It's going to be 50, right? So I have to change my loop structure here. How would I know that I'm done? If I'm starting at 50. All right. Flipping the less than to greater than. You think so? Okay, we're going to count down, so I'm going to subtract 1 instead. Okay, because this is 50, and this is what number? Is 50 ever greater than 50? So if I run it this way, I actually get nothing. It stops the loop. There's nothing there, right? So that had you run it like that way, you should have seen that that's a problem right away and put those numbers in your head. Is 50 greater than 50? No. So I have to know when to stop. What's the first element in my array?
Well, count is greater than 0.
Right. Exactly right. So now let's see what we get. And I counted backwards, starting at Wyoming, except I have an extra line here. Let me put a start so you know that we have a problem. All right, so I printed start, then I printed a blank line, and I printed Wyoming, and we're going in reverse order all the way to Alaska. I missed where's Alabama? I missed something here, right? So let's look at my positions. What would be the first time through the loop? Count is what? 50. So is 50 greater than 0? Yes. So I'm going to print out state sub 50, which is nil. There's nothing there outside of the bounds. Okay. So I subtract 1. Then I print state sub 49. So it started printing Wyoming, goes all the way down. And when I get to the end, I missed Alabama. So, right. So I get count as 1. Let's take the 1 position. 1 is greater than 0, yes. Print state sub 1, which is Alaska. Count minus equals 1. Count now has what value in it? 0. I come back up here. Is 0 greater than 0? So it skips, and it never prints my state sub 0. I missed that. All right, so I need to be equal. And how do I get, that gets rid of part of the problem. I get Alabama now. But I still have this blank line. I'm still accessing state sub 50. I need a something somewhere. Exactly. What do I need? A plus 1? Where? Minus 1 where? Right here? All right, so here's a, let's run it. It actually start, and I have Wyoming, which is the last guy, and it printed Wyoming again. Why did it print Wyoming again? Now here's an interesting problem with arrays. If I look at array sub -1, if I put a negative number as the index, it starts at the end of the array and lets you go backwards. So I can look at the last element in the array by saying state sub -1. So if I put up here state sub -1, let's see what I get. I get Wyoming again. All right, so this at this point, this happened to be 0. 0 minus 1 is -1, so now I'm printing out Wyoming again. So that's not quite right. So I don't think it should be there. Okay, it should be on the starting counter maybe. All right, so we have a lot of confidence in that, so let's try it. I need to subtract 1, right? So let's run that guy. And now I get Alabama at the end, that's correct. I have no blanks at the top. Where's my start? Here. So there's my start, no blanks, starts with Wyoming. So that's the correct way to count down. I set my counter to the end of the array less 1, because I'm going to start, the count is always off by 1. And these are really common programming problems. In every language, they have these kind of problems. All right? Any questions on that? Isn't that fun? No. So there are some other methods. We'll just run through a couple quickly. There are some methods like, well, let's go look at them. There are all kinds of methods that I can do on an array. And I can clear an array. I can count it. I can delete an element from the array. Each we'll talk about in a minute. The index one, this one. All right, index is the same as, let's run that one. Index sub, well, it's not quite the same. What that does is it tells you the index, returns the index of the object that it found in the array. So if I want to find what index a state is residing at, I can use that type of an element. So I can say puts states dot index, that's a method, and I tell it what do I want to look for. So let's look for what index, what state number is Nebraska. Okay, so I'm going to use this string, and it's going to search through the array and tell me a number, the index number of Nebraska. All right, so I can run that, and I get 26. So that's the same thing as if I said puts, well, not quite, state sub 26 is going to give me the string Nebraska. All right, so that's another way of looking at data inside of the array. The array is a nice short-term way of storing data for looking things up, like I said, in the rock, paper, scissors, etc. Let's see, what else? There's oh, okay, let's do that. The reverse I wanted to show you. Reverse returns a new array that has every element just reversed. So I can reverse my array and go through it the other way around. Okay, so for instance, I can just say puts states dot reverse. And that is the second one after my Nebraska here. It just printed them out starting with Wyoming. My array is now changed in that case.
So does that permanently change?
No, in this case, all it did was change the array to print it out, but I never store this back into itself again. So if I do, let's put a bunch of stuff just so we can see the difference. And if I print out states again, it'll actually be in the original order. Okay, so I didn't modify the state array. All I did was temporarily modify it so that the puts method could run on that array. If I wanted to save this back into the states array, how would I do that? Yeah, there is that special trick, but I would have to assign this as a variable back into itself. I'm going to call the reverse method, which returns an array, stuff it back into my states array, and now this is overwritten with the reverse of the original array. Does that make sense? I have to save that if I want to save that, basically. All right, there is another method called stats with an exclamation point at the end, and that is the same as doing, let's see, let's do it this way. Stop. That's the same as just doing this without storing it. States exclamation point calls a different method which replaces itself. Yes, you're right. Sorry. Very good. Good catch. I did that on purpose to. Yeah, the method is called reverse exclamation point. It's a whole different method. It reverses it. They say in place. I like to think of it reversing it and then stuffing it back over the top of it. All right, so there's any questions on any of those nice little methods? Lots of others you can play with. They're very useful. You'll be using those in upcoming assignments, so bookmark that page maybe. So there's another way of looping through these because it's such a common thing to do. So I'm going to comment that out. It's such a common thing to do this kind of a loop, actually our other one where we counted up, that Ruby built this in with a new method that they call each. And so I can call the states array, I can call the method on that called each. And let's do it with going to autocomplete for me. Stop. Seriously? Won't let me complete that? Stop. Each do. There we go. I want to do it like that. And this is a block of code. This is a loop, kind of like we did the times loop, number.times. We're saying, take every element of my array and run it through this loop. Do these statements using that value. And so internally, I need to have some variable that is going to receive every cell, the contents of every cell. So if I have a plural of states, what would an individual state be? Hint, hint. State, right? So I might call my variable state because internally in this loop I need some way of looking at each element in the cells that I have here. So I can just say puts state. All right, so state now will receive the value of every cell, and I don't have to worry about the counter. I don't have to worry about if I went over the counter, did it, went one beyond, did I do a plus instead of a minus, did I add 2 instead of 1? It does everything for me, and this will run essentially the same as our old version of this. that counted up. All right.
For each loop in C#.
Yes. Yep, like a for each. Very good. So it works the same way. I get all of my states. I didn't have to worry about a counter. Everything was all happy. So that's a shortcut way, and that's the way you'll see most code when we get to Rails. Rails has the each code all the time. Yeah. Yes.
How do you put each one with the index?
Ah. Well, let's do it back here first.
You keep avoiding.
Am I avoiding your question? No, I would never do that. Why do you want to know that?
So you can understand what I'm doing.
All right, so let's go back to my original counting up. So I start at 0. I'm going to be less than states dot count or length or size, whatever you want to type. And this is going to print out the states going up. So if I wanted to put, what she's saying is, I think, is that she wants to put like a 1 before this one and a 2 before this one, etc. Okay? So we might want to put that into a menu. Wouldn't that be nice? Right? Wouldn't that be just hunky-dory? So what I'm doing now, I'm printing the value of the cell that state subcount points to. So on that same line, I want to put a number. So what number do you think changes in my loop every time? All right. So if I printed out count right before this, let's put it in the interpolated way. It's just a little easier. Count, and then I might put a period and a space, and then I'm going to put this in interpolated string also, so I can have one big long string. So this is going to print a number followed by what that element points to, the actual state. So let's see what happens. All right, look at that. Is that cool? But there's a problem. Because my count starts at 0, 0 is a bad menu item. So how would I change that so that it actually prints 1, 2, 3, 4 instead of 0? All right, where would I put that count plus 1? In the puts, okay? As I'm doing this, I might add 1 to that, and that's why we're always off by 1. State sub 0 is actually the first element in the array. There we go. 1 through 50. And that's how normal people count. People don't count from 0 except programmers. So when you're writing programs, you don't want to count from 0 either. They think of the first element should be called 1, not 0. We don't know what that is, okay? So does that answer your question? Okay, good. So,
I do know that they were showing us in the Code Academy another way to
There's another way using an each with index. So let's go look at this documentation for that. There's a method called each with index. So here's the each, and that shows you the block. They did it with braces instead of a do loop, but it's the same thing. And here's an each with index. Gives you see, they don't do it right. Oh, each index. Sorry, I want each with index. Where's my each with index? Huh. They have it. Wow. They don't list it, but it is actually there. Let's try it and see. It should work. Each, unless they took it out, with, see, it's there. Index. So this is a way of going through the states and giving me an index as well. So not only do I get the element, but I need some type of a variable to store the index. So it's going to give me back a number, and I'm going to call it index, just because that makes sense. I can call it whatever I want. And here I would change this to print out a string of the index itself with a period. And then the state itself. And let's see what that comes out to be. So I get the same thing, but again, it started with 0. So the index gave me a 0, 1 through 49. I need that to actually say 1. How would I change my statement? There you go. So I'm going to add 1 to my guy here and run it again. And bada boom, bada bing. There we go. Look at that. Is that sweet? So that's 2 other ways of getting the same thing. A lot simpler than the while loop. But again, this is used in every language. So you should be able to write this in your sleep. That's everything is done with while loops. At the minimum, that's the basic that every language has. All right, any questions on arrays? Have we beat them to death enough? We'll see, yeah. All right, no questions?